What's up, members of the barrio? It's John, coming to you from the West Village of Manhattan, and today I'm going to be answering a question that I received from one of you guys about the biggest adjustments you have to make when you move to New York City. Now, all these adjustments are going to be a bit personal. Some of these might make more sense if you're coming to Manhattan. Some of them might make sense in any borough of this city. Here we go, the 10 biggest adjustments you have to make when you move to New York City. The first thing that we're gonna start with is the cost of living. And one of my favorite things about traveling outside of New York is appreciating how much cheaper most goods are when you leave the tri-state area here. But especially in Manhattan, going to grocery stores, I'll never forget my first few trips to the original grocery store I went to in the Village, Morton Williams, and seeing avocados costing $4. It's insane. Now, going to Trader Joe's has helped me out a lot in this sense, saving money on groceries, but in general, the cost of goods in New York City, groceries, food, not even gonna talk about apartments, everything is elevated here, something that might surprise you, not only if you're moving here, but even when you travel here, just going out at night, going to restaurants, those bills easily go over $100 for two people. You know, I had grocery bills going over $100, $150, yeah. New York City, very expensive place to live. Noise, and this is an adjustment that I think everybody makes when they move to New York City. And I grew up pretty close to here, the other side of the Hudson in New Jersey. But when you went to sleep at night in the suburbs of Jersey, you didn't hear a peep. Maybe you would hear a car coming by late at night, but you know, from my window in Greenwich Village, I've heard all sorts of craziness at all hours. You know, ambulances, police cars, people shouting, people on fire escapes above my window. I one time even heard a gunshot, which actually there was a little shooting. Nobody got hurt, I believe, nearby at one of the clubs. So this loud thud woke me up in the middle of the night. So these sorts of things don't generally happen in other cities around the US. Maybe some of them, but if you're coming from a smaller part of the US, to be awoken in the middle of the night to all sorts of craziness and walking during the day, people shouting, construction, it's something that I believe you get numb to over time, but you will definitely notice it when you first move to New York City. Not having a car. There are very few cities in the United States where you can get away with not having a car, and New York City is by far the best one. But I grew up in New Jersey, and in almost every other spot in the United States, you probably grew up driving your car everywhere. Well, that completely changes when you come to New York, and honestly for me, it wasn't that hard of an adjustment. I've heard other people complaining about this more, but you are more reliant on public transportation or Ubers or taxis to get around. So for some of you, that might actually be a reason not to move to New York. I've had a lot of friends who still live in New Jersey who say they do not want to give up their car and their freedom to escape the city whenever they want. But for me, not having a car wasn't such a big deal, but it could be for you. This is an obvious carryover from not having a car, but walking all the time. And this adjustment, actually, I did notice it a lot because growing up in the suburbs, you know, you drive from point A to point B, you're hardly walking anywhere. But in New York, I check my iPhone, I'm easily walking 2 to 3 miles per day, and you start to look at how many miles per week you walk, or if you're doing a big trip, it actually keeps you in shape, but there are certain pitfalls to that. The biggest probably being grocery shopping. You know, I have to walk to Trader Joe's, I have a little cart, I have to go up 4 flights of stairs, and then you also get lazy if you live in a walk-up apartment. You start to time your trips, like throwing out garbage is only gonna happen when you actually have to leave the next morning to do something else. So walking is an extra benefit of New York City, but it can also be an adjustment if you're not used to it. I never thought I would say this in a video, but fashion, maybe it's more of a Manhattan thing, and it could be just peer pressure or something subliminal, being surrounded by advertising and very attractive people walking around all the time wearing the latest trends or wearing really unique clothes. But I think that I've actually paid a bit more attention about what I've worn since I moved to New York almost 8 years ago. I mean, guys, look at this shirt. Pink flamingos. I clearly care about fashion. But seriously, this may not apply to you, but I think if you move to New York and you see people, you know, especially trying out different looks, different things, you might be encouraged to try to dress differently yourself. So yeah, I think it's an interesting adjustment that many of you may go through. The fast pace, and New York City is known for being a very fast-paced environment. If you grew up somewhere, middle America, let's say, away from a very big city, this adjustment could be much harder for you than it was perhaps for me. People here, they walk fast. They talk fast, especially if they grew up in this area. I myself even talk, I think, a lot faster off camera when I'm not making videos because I have a background in broadcasting, but a lot of my friends in North Jersey or any native New Yorkers you meet here, anywhere in this area, they talk super quick. And if you're coming from a foreign country even, that could be a bit of an adjustment for you. But also the pace at restaurants, the pace of deliveries, things move quick here, things happen fast, and a lot of this is a byproduct of the people that move here. They're very motivated, they're always trying to be doing something. So this could be a pretty difficult adjustment for you depending on it, and if you're expecting it or if you're used to it, but it's something that I have very easily embraced myself. Fear of missing out. I think that this adjustment is more prevalent when you just moved to New York City because you have all of the world's options at your fingertips. If you make new friends, they're gonna always wanna go out, experience new things, new openings, new stores, new restaurants. It can be a little bit overwhelming. I remember when I first came to New York, I always wanted an excuse to leave my apartment, and I thought I was wasting my rent if I'm spending so much to live in this city to be home a lot. So it kind of encourages you to get out a lot, but that can almost be stressful. You feel like you constantly have to be experiencing something new just to enjoy the New York City experience. So that's almost a little bit of a warning. Don't feel like you always need to be going out just to justify your rent in New York, trust me. The late nights of New York City. If you're watching this from Europe, you can pretty much ignore what I'm about to say, but most of the United States, if you're going out at night, last call is about 1:30, bars close at 2 o'clock. If you move to New York and you like to party, you like to go out late, when I was single and I was younger, if I went out to meet friends, it would likely be around midnight or later, and you could be out till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Things move a lot later in New York. Obviously, they call it the city that never sleeps, but the nightlife certainly has that element to it. So if you're a night owl, New York City is the perfect place for you because not only are bars, clubs, or other after-hours places open late, but you also have like the 24-hour delis. You have some late night food options, like some of my favorites, like Mamoon's open till 4 o'clock. I think it's even open till 5 o'clock in the morning. So if you like to stay up late, you can make that adjustment pretty easily. You definitely have a lot of cool things to do late at night in New York City, so that was an adjustment that I had to make as someone that did enjoy going out quite a bit when I first moved here. Superficial relationships. This one sounds a little bit sad, but in a big city like New York, it can be pretty easy to make friends, but it is far harder to maintain those friendships, to actually have good friends in New York. And there's a lot of reasons for this. One is that people tend to come here many times for just short periods. They're here for a season, they're here for a year, for a job, for school, for whatever it may be, just to get New York City out of their system. So, you make friends for a couple of months and then they move back to wherever they come from. And the same could honestly be said about dating here. You can meet a lot of people because there's a lot of single people in New York. It's a great place to come to be single, but to actually find good relationships, well, ask any of my single friends in New York and they'll all be complaining, guys and girls, about, I'm sure, the same things, kind of that fear of missing out in relationships, but it also occurs with friends, and you just have to adjust to that, to people, coming through your life for a short period of time, whatever the nature of that relationship is, and you just get numb to it. This is my favorite adjustment of New York City, and I think maybe one of the biggest surprises to people coming here from outside of the area. Small apartments. I live in a 350 square foot apartment, and if I took the money that it costs for my apartment and moved to, I don't know, Toledo, Columbus, Ohio, I would probably have a 3-bedroom house. You have to downsize, especially in Manhattan. You pay a lot of money for location. You are not paying for space here. If you want a big apartment in downtown Manhattan, you're looking at over $4,000 a month easily for a really nice apartment. So you adjust to having roommates, you adjust to having a tiny little bathroom, you adjust to having the dreaded kitchen that also happens to serve as your living room, one weird combined thing. I personally have that myself. And it's always strange when you go other places, you visit your friends in the suburbs, in other states, in other countries, and they have these huge apartments, and even you start to go to hotel rooms that are bigger than your apartment in New York, and you think, wow, how can I live in such a small space? But then in the end, you remember that reason you first came here, because you love this city and you love all the opportunities that come with living in that small little apartment. Guys, also check out my other New York City playlists, all linked down below in the description. Good advice, good tips, good ideas if you're traveling here or if you're going to be moving here. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Until next time.